Hey guys, and welcome to Questions About Simple Church. Today we're going to look at the very first question that most people ask, and that is, what is Simple Church? To understand what Simple Church is, we really need to drop our current and cultural understanding about what church is. Simple Church is not what we normally do on a Sunday morning in a big organised church, shrunk down to fit in someone's lounge room. It's not a denomination, and it's not a movement. It's not a network, and it might not even be a regular event. Simple Church is an organic gathering of disciples of Christ. It's a New Testament modelled church that can gather anytime, anywhere, in homes, cafes, parks, and gather for fellowship, food, Bible study. It's all about relationship. It's about family. It's about you being a disciple of Jesus. The word organic is often used when describing simple churches. But what does organic mean? Here is a statement by Frank Viola describing an organic church, and he describes it really well. By organic church, I mean a church that is born out of spiritual life instead of being constructed by human institutions and held together by religious programs. Organic church life is a grassroots experience that is marked by face-to-face community, every member functioning, open participatory meetings, as opposed to pastor to pew services. Non-hierarchical leadership and the centrality and supremacy of Jesus Christ as the functional leader and head of the gathering. Another word that often gets used when we talk about simple church or organic church is ecclesia. To understand ecclesia, we need to understand that the Bible was not originally written in English. And the word that the New Testament uses for the word church is the Greek word ekklesia. Now, I've explained the word ecclesia in another video, so I won't go into that too much in this video. What we know about the ecclesia that Jesus built was that it was a closely knitted community of people, like-minded believers. They were like family. They had all things in common. They shared meals together. They shared with each other. They cared for each other. They shared their possessions. They ensured that no one was needy amongst them. The ecclesia in the New Testament was never about a weekly meeting or building. I desire to see us get back to the ecclesia of the New Testament, that closely knitted community of people that aren't divided by denominations or theological issues, but people that just love each other, love Jesus, care for each other, and ensure that people's needs are met. I desire to get back to that. Acts chapter 2, verse 46 to 47. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart. Acts chapter 4, verse 32. And the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul. And not one of them claimed that anything belonging to him was his own, but all things were common property to them. A simple church, an organic church, is a community of like-minded disciples of Jesus, relating together, regularly gathering in small groups, gathering for relationship and fellowship, for prayer and encouragement, for Bible study and worship, for evangelism and discipleship making. That's church. That's love. That's community. That's family. That's Simple Church. Simple Church is not about a building. It's not about a church service. It's not about a weekly meeting. It's not about a large concert style gathering. Simple Church is about us being the church, being community, being family, opening our lives, our homes, sharing our meals and possessions. What we find in the New Testament is that the ecclesia, the church, predominantly met in houses. It was a house-like feeling, a family-like gathering. And that's what Simple Church is meant to be like. A house-like feeling, a family-like gathering. Simple Church is not like an organised church or an institutionalised church that meets together for a couple hours every week to sing some songs and share communion and take up an offering and listen to a sermon. Simple Church should be like family. And now I'm going to show you this video that will show you the difference very simply between an organised church or an institutionalised church and a simple church or an organic church. Enjoy.
Hi, we're going to demonstrate how to explain Simple Church to someone within a couple of minutes just using a napkin. Simple Church is church in its simplest form where it is easy to multiply. We're going to use a triangle to represent Simple Church because a simple church has three elements. The three elements of Simple Church are loving God, loving others, and making disciples. These three things make up the DNA of Simple Church. For our purposes, the definition of a simple church is a group of followers of Jesus who have the headship of Jesus, who together commit to love God, love others, and make disciples. We get this DNA from the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. The Great Commandment, Jesus says, to love God and to love others. And in the Great Commission, he commands us to go and make disciples. So a simple church is a group of people with the headship of Jesus who commit together to do these three things. Now, to illustrate an institutional church, we will use a different shape. We will use a square. The triangle represents simple church. The square represents institutional church, which is what is dominant in the West. The square represents institutional church, which has added 4 additional elements to church, making it more complex. In the institutional church, we've added buildings, we've added staff, we have added programs, and because the square is pretty expensive, we have added a budget to pay for it all. So the institutional church has buildings, staff, programs, and a budget. When we remove these things, we have church in its simplest form. When we add these things, we have a more complex church that is more expensive and more difficult to start, sustain, or multiply. Now, using this illustration, we are in no way attacking squares, but we are simply trying to affirm the validity and the necessity for more triangles in our culture. And here's how you can explain Simple Church to a friend in a couple of minutes on a napkin.
Simple Church is just that, focused on Christ, focused on each other, loving God, loving people, and making disciples. And if you have a question about Simple Church, send it to the link on the screen now so that we can share it and answer it. God bless.
What is Simple Church? Consider this illustration. Today, when we hear the word church, we often think of a building or a service to attend. We say things like, "Hey, there's my church," or "It's time for church to start." This is how the word has become ingrained in our speech and understanding. Instead of a meeting, building, or organization, Simple Church seeks to recapture the simple New Testament idea of seeing and experiencing the church as a family. What kind of family is the church? Just before Jesus left this earth, he gave a new commandment to his followers. As I have loved you, so love one another. The New Testament church was to be a family that was primarily about receiving Jesus' love and extending his love to others. This experience would fulfill his mission of making disciples of all the nations. So a local church, in its simplest form, can be understood as a family of people receiving Jesus' love, sharing his love through relationships with others, and making disciples of all the nations as we go through life. Rather than a denomination or organization, a simple church primarily identifies itself with the kingdom that Jesus spoke about. It's hard for us today to wrap our minds around Jesus' kingdom, in part because we tend to think of kings as bad. But Jesus is a perfect, loving, compassionate, generous king that power cannot corrupt and who lays down his life for his people. A simple church family looks to Jesus for wisdom and guidance in all matters. While not fully realized until he returns, Jesus proclaimed that his kingdom was at hand now. Rather than a well-defined organization, his kingdom is much more akin to a body or living organism that is moving and shifting on earth as his people go about their daily lives. Simple church families can experience his kingdom daily in any location where Jesus is followed as king. But for centuries, Christians have tried to characterize his church in more rigid ways. Today, we often try to add as a necessity to a local church family buildings, budgets, programs, and professionals. While these additions can be a blessing, sometimes they serve as a distraction from the church receiving and giving his love and fulfilling his great commission. And sometimes these structures can actually have nothing to do with his kingdom at all. In a simple church, we seek to function as a family of people following King Jesus without these added elements, in an attempt to focus our attention on the essentials. While simple churches may meet in homes, around dinner tables, or in ways that may look more like a family reunion or get-together, the focus is not primarily on a weekly meeting. Rather, simple church is about a way of life where we seek to follow King Jesus together as a family in his kingdom, receiving his love, sharing it with others, and making disciples along the way. This is what we mean when we say simple church, and hopefully this video makes simple church simpler for you to understand. I'm Gavin Durson for the Simple Church Alliance.